Welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton, and welcome to the extra time segment for Everton 0, Leicester City 2. Everton go spiralling down the table, let's be honest. It's been a painful couple of weeks, but I think this was probably the worst of the lot. I think I'm joined by Mike from the Unholy Trinity podcast. How are you, Mike? I can't imagine you feeling much better than I am.
Yeah, it was poor, mate, wasn't it? I think after the two previous games, great win against Crystal Palace. We saw some really nice football, and that for me was the blueprint on how we should approach games at home against sides of similar sort of stature and ability. And I put Leicester in that category without trying to be disrespectful. Players who could hurt us, but we could certainly beat them. And it's the first time I come away from Goodison Park this season, I think, being really disappointed with the performance. I didn't see a great deal to suggest that we were really in the game, bar a couple of chances we should have really done better with. Leicester, for me, bossed the game, and a lot of that was down to probably how we set up, leaving Zisagana get on his own as a deep line midfielder and letting Amadou Onana go that little bit further forward. And I'm not playing Alex Iwobi as close as he normally does to Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So a few issues there, plus mistakes, errors again, which sort of creeped into our game, and a nervy crowd, and it was the perfect storm for a poor performance, to be honest.
How much do you think the fans played the part in that, though? Because I think, obviously, we've, as fans, want to lift the players and we've got to play our part, but how much of the performance sort of filtered through to the fans? Because I can imagine, I think it was a bit of a weird atmosphere anyway, but, it didn't really turn toxic until the performance was evidently poor, wasn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't describe it as toxic. I just think that the fans from quite early were quite nervy. We missed that early chance through Alex Iwobi. It's really, he's got to score. Great play from Calvert-Lewin, by the way. Great little ball through. Reminiscence of Newcastle last season when Iwobi stuck the ball in the back of the net on his wrong foot. Iwobi's got to score that. But after that, I thought as the first half kept on, we were making mistakes. We were doing the obviously goal kicks, passing out from the back. The crowd, we know we're not used to Everton doing that. And when we did it and it worked against Palace, it's great and it comes off and you think, oh yeah, look, we've cracked it. But when you're playing against a side that have got a high press, and Leicester were literally sitting, three of them, waiting on the edge of the 18-yard box every single time we got a goal kick, and we still persisted in playing this short goal kick. Now, when you got Calvert-Lewin up top, he can go long because you can play off him. Just get players around him. You can play off him. He's good in the air. Let's do that. And we still kept on doing the short goal kick. And I think that's what really got into the crowd. And the crowd then got nervous. There was moans and groans. And I understand it. And I said on our podcast yesterday, and I've written this week's piece for the BBC, saying the same thing. The fears of relegation, because of what we went through last season, are still there. And that's going to take a while as fans, because we're all fans, to actually shift that feeling of a little bit of dread. The fact we're still floating around the bottom part of the table. So I think when you have this kind of game against a side who are in and around where we are, as good as they are, because they are a good side, they started poorly, but listen, they are a good side. We get nervous as a fan base and we get edgy when we don't pick up points. And I think that's what combined, and that's why the atmosphere on Saturday was a difficult one, to be honest with you. And I think it sort of played its part in the players' nervy approach as the game went on.
But I think that surely as manager, I think Frank Lampard's got to do a bit better at reading the room in that respect, because I think every Everton fan went into this game, whatever way you look at it, is do not lose that game.
I agree. I think I had it down as a do not lose game. I think some of us were probably guilty of not giving Leicester as much respect as they deserve because of the start of the season. But once they sort of turned the corner with that 4-0 win against Nottingham Forest, they've been a different side. And I mean, let's not forget the bulk of their players have been together for a number of years. They've been under the same manager for a number of years. They've got quality throughout. They've got players that can hurt you. They know how each other play. So, it was only a matter of time before Leicester picked up. And rightly so, they stuck with the manager. And you can see it now that they're reaping the rewards, and they're a quality side, and we didn't do anywhere near enough to counteract the players that could hurt us. James Maddison was probably man of the match. You had Daka, who's quick, pacey centre forward, causes problems. Harvey Barnes causes problems. Dewsbury Hall causes problems. Tillemans, as he always does, causes problems. We just didn't do enough, and I think maybe Frank was a little bit naive there. I think what he's thought is, and I'm no football manager, but I think what he's thought is, we're at home, be a good atmosphere under the lights. Let's try and play on the front foot. So we'll put Amadou Onana slightly further forward, and we'll try and take the game to Leicester early on. Now, if that goal goes in from Alex Iwobi, maybe it's a different game. But even at that point, it was end to end. It started. It was a good game for the neutral early on. But I think at that point, when we started to see Leicester take control and hit us on the counter time and again, that's when you've got to change things up for me and go, okay, well, you sit deep now. Let's go 2 in front of the back four. Let's cover there. Let Alex Iwobi get closer to Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And like someone said in the chat there, the wingers have got to be, I think, a bit braver and take a bit more responsibility for not only going at the man, trying to beat them and putting a decent cross in, but also getting shots off against a goalkeeper who's been poor this season as well. So there's a lot of things there on Saturday which we just didn't do to help us.
Failed to do it. Like, I think Frank Lampard got it horribly wrong.
I think, yeah. I think the thing is, I think it's always easy to, obviously, you always look at the manager and say, what could he have done different? And like I say, the biggest issue was the midfield. Now, Onana was injured before the game. He got injured, I think, in training on the Thursday, got a bit of a knock on his ankle. So you think, well, should he have been missed? No, but our best midfield three includes him. Then you get the injury to Garner Gay off at half time. Then you get the injury to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who goes off with sort of, 25, 30 minutes to go. And, combine it all, and it all played into us not getting anything from the game. So even at 1-0 down, we started the second half okay. Dom should have scored. Great ball from Alex Iwobi, and really lift the ball over the goalkeeper, or he had time probably to even go around the goalkeeper, and he's just hit it, hasn't he? He's just hit it right across the floor at the keeper's legs, and it's saved. And I think, we weren't great. There was mistakes made. We were nervy, as I say. The first goal, Connor Cody, when he's been great for us, I'm not here to personally attack any player, but when a player makes a mistake, and he'll look back at that and think, that ball should have just gone. He swung his foot. He's glanced it with his left foot, hasn't he? It's gone out to Tillemans. Doesn't get closed down quick enough, and it's in the back of the net. Great finish. But that's a mistake from us. And the second goal, Decore waved his foot at the ball one way in the final third. There was no commitment to what he was doing. Lost it on the counter, 2-0, game over. So for me, it's mistakes again. So it's a combination of the setup was wrong from the off. There was mistakes. We weren't clinical when we had to be with the chances that we did get, those two key chances. Injuries then took hold as well. So it was just a perfect storm for a poor Everton performance. And the mind just said time and again, that, in terms of development, it's never a linear path, is it? It's always bumps in the road. There's inconsistencies. Everton can look great one week and look poor the week after. Taking the next step in our developments is becoming consistent and putting 2, 3, 4 games together where we look like a decent side.
Well, yeah, I agree with that, but I just think we should have. I think the players' mistakes cost us the chance of getting a draw, but I think that if we were ever going to have a chance of winning that game, the tactics has to be different. I don't think the setup was right at all.
Yeah, and like I said, it's easy to look at the manager, and the manager he'll probably look back on that and think he got it wrong. And we can all sit here and say, from the off, the setup was wrong. We can all probably agree with that, and we were all surprised. I sat there thinking, why has he done that against a mobile midfield? And people were saying their weak point was Samari. I thought Samari played quite well. I thought he looked decent, he looked strong, but we didn't really test him. The biggest test for us was, can we keep a hold of Maddison and Harvey Barnes? They were the two. And Dewsbury Hall probably as the third player. They're the ones who dictated the play for them. And we're not ones to be getting really anywhere near them. But they're a good footballing side. But we were naive in our approach. And, Frank Lampard's also learning on the job as well. We also forget that. He's a young manager. He hasn't got a great deal of experience. He's probably trying different things, seeing if things work. Maybe he sees things in training that we can't yet replicate on a match day, but he thinks that we should be able to. Little things like that. So, but I think maybe he's got it when things aren't working, make the change, revert to what we know before obviously the game gets away from us. And that's maybe a criticism which he needs to take. And he knows better than us where he's gone wrong. Of course he does. And we'll see if he learns this week.
He does seem like the type who learns from his mistakes, is what I will say. He's certainly one of the less arrogant managers we've had. He seems more willing to adapt if he needs to, even if it takes him a bit of time. I think that will be the one thing that sort of keeps him out of danger in terms of keeping his job, is that I think he's proven on previous occasions since he's been here that when the goings got tough, he's been willing to change things.
Most definitely, yeah. He's not one of those. He hasn't got a massive ego, has he? He's certainly not in that particular headspace where
without naming names.
Well, we don't need to do it, but he's not in a headspace where he thinks too much of himself. So that's the first thing. But he does tend to learn. We've seen him adjust. We've seen him be flexible this season already with his change from the back five to obviously the back four. And he tends to play players on form. We saw Anthony Gordon drop out, who struggled, I think. Although he got his goal against Crystal Palace, he has struggled in recent weeks. Brought in Dwight McNeil. But we'll see more changes. I mean, obviously tomorrow is different again. We're going to see wholesale changes, I think, tomorrow. We're going to see quite a few different players come in, because for me, the important thing this week is to get a win on Saturday. And it doesn't sit well maybe with some, but more important to get 3 points on Saturday than get through tomorrow night. And we'll see a lot of changes. And
yeah, I think we should really. I'll be honest. Let's give some of the younger lads a go. Let's see what some of the under-21s can do, because I'd be resting all the key players for this game. I know we want to obviously win a trophy, but this season's got to. I'm terrified about our prospects in terms of picking up the points needed to stay up. So I would absolutely not risk anyone in tomorrow's game.
I think, though, that the 21s have got a big game, haven't they, against PSG on Wednesday. So I'm sure that's going to be in the mind of obviously the players, Frank Lampard and probably Paul Tate as well, thinking, okay, well, because the players that you want to see from the 21s are the likes of Stanley Mills, probably Charlie Whittaker's another one. Tom Cannon is probably a third. So if you look at those three, they're three key players for the 21s. So it's trying to strike a balance with them and what they want to achieve in Wednesday's game. But I think even if you didn't include the 21s and you just rotated what we have available in terms of first team players, you can still make wholesale changes, from Begovic, Holgate, Keane. Patterson could probably start the game as well. You got Tom Davis, Decore. You look then, I mean, you could even argue you've got Rondon, Mopé, Gordon or McNeil. There's other options there to actually change 9-10 players if the manager wanted to do that and just say, right, okay, well, we're totally going to freshen things up altogether and have sort of two separate sides, because I think Tuesday will have no bearing on how things go Saturday, in my opinion, and the two sides will be totally different. But would be great to see a few of the kids get a go, of course.
I think I'm big on the whole. What are we playing PSG in? Is it like a?
It's like the Intercontinental Under-21 Cup or something like that down at Walton Hall Park. So depends how seriously you want to take it against good opposition, because they're a good side. I think you play pretty sure they play the Champions League at Under-21 level.
Yeah, I think that the Under-21s, obviously, you want them to do well, obviously, but the whole point of the Under-21s is to provide a pathway to the first team. I think now would be a brilliant time, regardless of that, to give these kids a go, because I'm also convinced that some of them could do a better job at the moment than some of our more out-of-form senior players.
I think younger players play without fear, don't they? So when they come in, they see it as an opportunity to impress the first team manager and look to try and get a place in the squad for the following league game, which obviously against the same opposition as well a few days later. So for them, of course, if you ask them, they'd probably rather play in the Carabao Cup because they're getting first team experience. But as I say, I'm sure whether we like it or not, there will have to be a balance struck. Now, if you don't start the kids and you give them 10 or 15 minutes, then you can quite easily travel back and then play the next day. That shouldn't be a problem at all. But I think we will see a bit of involvement from the younger players, and I mind you, in that press conference which came out today, but will be surrounded by senior professionals. So Yeremina is potentially going to be available. He would probably come in this game as opposed to the league game, that's for sure, because you're not going to see him outside the Tarkowski or Cody on forward. So it's an ideal game to get a few players back in and give them some game time as well.
Yeah, we'll see. But going back to the Leicester game, obviously, it was just we need to be a bit more. I think what I liked about us earlier on this campaign is that we weren't giving away goals easily. So we seemed to be really, really steely. I think that seemed to go a little bit in this game.
I think that we've given up over the course of the season. If you look at the difference in terms of the goals actually conceded prior to this game and the expected goals conceded, there was like a 9-goal difference. So that suggests that we were giving away big opportunities, making last ditch blocks, and Jordan Pickford's being informed. So we've certainly been better defensively. We can all say that, of course. The characters at the back are better. The lads who play week in, week out, which helps, and the better defenders than what we've had in previous seasons. So that's definitely been addressed, but there's still room for improvements defensively as well, to not give up such good opportunities. I think the concern is, if you're going to be a side that doesn't concede many but doesn't score many, then you've got to be keeping clean sheets every single weekend, and we're not at that particular level. So what we've got to try and do is address the attacking issues, whether that's in the January market, we dip into it and look for a wide player, we look for a number 10, we look for a striker, because obviously your main striker at the moment is injury prone at best, and when he has a little niggle like he did on Saturday, you wonder how much that is mentally, that he's thinking, I've got to go off, I've got a little niggle. Do you know what I mean? If he's been fully fit for 12 months, then he probably stays on and he's okay. So it's that side of things as well. There's a lot of things that we need to address, but attacking wise is the biggest issue that we've got.
Yeah, I think the attack's easily the problem. But I'll just go on to the comments for the moment. Stink Pooters said, I was expecting our midfield to dominate teams more. I definitely agree with that. The midfield needs to be a bit steelier than it was. Like you say, I think Anana had a knock. Ganagay got a knock. But even then, I still don't think we were doing enough in the midfield. You mentioned earlier on about Crystal Palace, but Crystal Palace played with a 2-man midfield in that game where we did dominate. Every other team that's played with a 3 has tends to have dominated our midfield.
But I think, though, to address that's when you do need to have your 2 deep line midfielders, because when you've got a progressive midfield 3 who are mobile, and they just had Ray Samari sitting because Tillemans was pushing on, as was obviously Maddison was all wherever he wanted to be. But I think you've got to then look at, you've got to be a bit more proactive and maybe not as reactive, but you've got to be proactive and look to match up and set up correctly from the off, don't you?
Absolutely. I think that's where we went horribly wrong on the weekend. Like I say, I hope Frank Lampard learns from that. We'll wrap up in a moment. I'm just going to go through the comments with the... we've had a few people tuning in. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and getting your comments in. So we've got Wando says, after Newcastle, I said 6 out of the next 12 points, all but in a difficult situation. Well, in that time, I think we've picked 4 up already, which is not terrible. I think we really do need to win that Bournemouth game, certainly not lose it. I think that's a bit more respectable maybe, but it's more the fact that what's concerning me at the moment is that other sides below us, of course, Leicester were one of them until they beat us, are starting to find ways of picking up points and finding ways to score goals, and we can't. That's what concerns me.
It's a big issue, isn't it? But what I would also say is, though, as well, we, as much as we're not overly creative, we created two big chances at the weekend, and arguably, if you stick one of those in, it's a different game. And I think that's the problem we've got is when we create 2 or 3 big, and when I say big chances that they should be sticking away, and I include both those on Saturday in that category. If you're creating them, you've got to be clinical. So if that's all you're creating, you've got to be clinical. So the problem is that we're not clinical because the quality of player maybe isn't there. Well, it's not there. Let's be honest. We've got good players in certain areas, but we're not great, certainly. So you've got to look then at the window. Okay, well, what do we do in the window? Do we go and sign a striker? Do we get a winger on loan? Do we go back in for Kudus, who seems to be quite keen still to come and sign for the club, because he would change, I think, the dynamics totally of how we actually attack as a team. So that is the big problem: is what can we do in January? We shouldn't just focus on that window and say, like, well, we'll address it in January. We need to also address the issue we've got now and look to change things and become a better attacking side without opening up too much and losing our newfound defensive solidity as well. So there's a few issues there for the manager and the coaching staff to address. But this week is important because we've got to make sure that we end when we go into the World Cup break on a semi-high, whether that's getting 3 points, getting a point, getting through in the cup and getting a point and 3 points, which would be the best scenario, whatever that might be. We can't afford to lose on Saturday, because imagine going to a 6-week break and going below Bournemouth, so we're going to be probably sitting 17th, if not lower. We could be in a relegation zone, over that 6-week break, which we don't want to be having on our head, on the players' heads, because you come back to pressure, to anxiety.
You come back to Wolves at home, and if they do to us what Leicester have just done,
which they easily could.
Very, very nasty.
Yeah, new manager in place as well for them. A serial winner in the new manager. He's won things. He's a good quality manager. So they're going to get 6 weeks as a pre-season really working with him. So the Wolves that come to Everton in 6-7 weeks' time is not the Wolves that we would have seen maybe a week or 2 weeks ago. So again, we've got to really, really look to win that game Saturday and go into the break on a little bit of a mini high if we can.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very concerned, to be honest, about our prospects. Sting Puter said, "Do we go for Brereton Diaz in January?"
Maybe. I don't know how well he started the season. I think he's been a little bit hit and miss. I think
hasn't he?
Yeah, but I think though with any player that you bring in, it's in our setup. Do they work? Now Neil Maupay doesn't really work because he's not a big striker, so he doesn't hold the ball up particularly well. He needs service as well. He needs those crosses coming into the box, which we don't tend to get in. So you've got to find a striker that works as well. And for me, we need a striker who's athletic but big and good in the air. And whether Diaz is that man, I don't think he probably is.
Maybe not, no.
So probably not for me, no.
I don't know. Erwin Kuhn was asking what positions would you like to improve in January. I think we mentioned a few there, maybe Kudus, if that is a possibility. Erwin himself said creative midfielder, winger and striker.
Yeah, I think probably two out of three of them would be the priorities. We won't touch anything defensively. Defensively we're pretty well covered by left back. So I think there and central midfield, of course, we've got 6 players for those 3 positions. So it's got to be the attacking positions, and that's the problem, is that you've got the same lads playing week in, week out. There's no real pressure on them as well. So the guarantee to get a game. And when you've got that kind of situation where there's no competition for places, that's when complacency sets in. So I think we've got to look at those positions and look to push those players as well, push those players on and cause a little bit of competition to make them play better as well.
Yeah, I think that's obviously the more competition, the more you drive the standards up a little bit. Our standards are so low at the moment.
Just go through the motions. We at times in attack we play safe, so we don't even at times look to beat a man. We get so far, then we go back. That ends up going further back. How many times on Saturday did we see us play back to Jordan Pickford from an attacking position? It happened quite often. So that
was horrible, to be honest. I know people say we're getting on the players' backs for that, but players have got to be a bit braver.
That's it. It is bravery. I think we'd rather see, as a fan base, we'd rather see Demarai Gray, Anthony Gordon, Dwight McNeil, whoever it might be, have a go to try and beat a man. A little bit of skill, drop your shoulder, off you go, and try and get a cross in or try and get into the box, than stop, turn back, go back to your fullback, who then goes back to your centre half, who then gets put under pressure by a Leicester side who played the high press, then goes back to Jordan Pickford. So we'd rather them have a go. You could win a throw-in, could win a corner, could get the ball across, could get into the box, could score a goal. Or
thing is also with players dropping the shoulder and beating a man, when you play against a high press team, if you do beat the man, you've beat a good few lines of defence.
Yeah, that's right. It's right, and the players need to trust in their own ability, and all we want is a little bit of honesty and a little bit of the players showing their ability and having a go as an attacking team. There's no point when you 1-0 down. What's the point in playing safe? There's no point, is there? Have a go and try something different, because it's too obvious, it's too slow. And where we were good against Palace was when we were knocking the ball around. It was quick, it was zippy, it was to feet. On Saturday, a lot of the balls that were going to Idrissa Gana Gueye were knee height, and he's trying to control the ball with his knee because the ball from the centre halves was sloppy, and the technique wasn't there. Now I think that was partly because of the anxiety, because of, as I say, I think we do as a fan base play into it sometimes, but we need to be better on the ball. We need to feel that bit more relaxed and give ourselves a chance, have a bit of quality, trust yourself. And at times we don't. And that's where consistency comes in. And we should, as time goes on, technically get better at that. But that also comes with improving the quality of player, which also isn't done in one transfer window. So there's a lot of things to sort of weigh up there as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it's all about getting to January and just try and, it's damage limitation, unfortunately, until then. I think try and maybe get that win at Bournemouth in the league in particular, but just we've got a few games then after Christmas until the window opens, but just try and hang in there until then, because at the moment we're going to have to do something to really freshen things up. It's already gone really stale, I think. This World Cup break for me can't come quick enough.
No, what can be seen as a bit of a reset button, but also I think it's important. The manager says the same thing. When we win, don't get too carried away, and when we lose, don't get too carried away. Because we are going to be inconsistent. He knows it. We know it. I'm not saying, by the way, they get off scot-free, because they don't. Because when the setup looks wrong and the manager makes a mistake tactically, or the players make mistakes, then obviously, rightly so, you discuss it and you talk about it, etc. But I think we've got to understand as a fan base that we are going to have this situation. So when we're all thinking we've cracked it by beating Crystal Palace 3-0 and we look great and look at the goals we scored, and they were, and it was a great performance, and we deserved the win, and I was delighted with how we performed that day. But let's not shout it from the rooftops that Everton are now a force to be reckoned with, because we are going to be a side who floats around sort of 14th, 15th this season, and obviously, fingers crossed, hopefully stays in the Premier League. And that's where we're going to be for a little bit. So we've got to also just temper our expectations a touch, and not get too down with the defeats, and not get too high with the wins as well.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but we'll wait and see what January brings. I mean, obviously, for now it's just a case of grit our teeth and hang on. It's tough.
It's not easy. It's okay me saying don't get too high or too low. I'm guilty of it all the time, and we all, Saturday night we were all sitting there like a bear with a sore head, where we, think, I thought we should have been better, and we weren't. And what are we doing there? We had a strong start 11. We were naive. What's gone wrong? But when you sort of digest it and you sit back on the day after, you've got to just sort of be honest and think, well, okay, I expect that sometimes. But the important thing is, okay, we expect it. Can we learn? And in the next 2 games now, can we show improvements against the same side? That's the sign of a team that is moving in the right direction, if you learn your lesson and you put it into practice.
Well, we'll have to wait and see if they can pull that off. But for now, we'll leave it at that. Everton 0, Leicester 2. Like I say, we'll leave it at that, and hopefully have this very much consigned to the history books. This game, hopefully move on and get back to winning ways as soon as possible. But for now, guys, let us know your opinions. Keep your comments coming in even after the stream's over. Give us a like and subscribe for more content. Until next time, guys. Thanks for tuning in on the Toffee Blues.